Very good morning, dear class 7. Nice to see you again in our social science class. This is Shashi, your social science teacher. As we have finished our block 5, so it's time for sample answers of this block, Delhi Sultanate 1. Today we will review our homework and practice some more. We will discuss question answers of workbook, content book, and also bonus questions of this blog. So everyone, before starting the discussion, be sure that you have all the essentials, your workbook, content book, stationery, along with your notebook, in which you have written your all answers. So now, children, it's time to discuss answers. I will provide you sample answers of HOTS and some more, which you may find it hard to understand. As these are sample answers that may vary from your answers. You just watch the video, review your answers, and edit whatever mistake you did. But children, you don't have to copy these answers. When I will check your workbook and notebook, I want to see different answers. I hope honestly and sincerely you are completing your work on the daily basis. So let's start. First, we will discuss workbook answers. So take out your workbook, open page 29 of worksheet. Let's start S1. The first question is, why were the early rulers of the Delhi Sultanate referred to as the Mamluk? In Arabic, the term Mamluk means slave. The early rulers of the Delhi Sultanate were referred to as Mamluks because they were the slave military commanders of Muhammad of Ghor. Okay, now the second question. In the second question, there are two parts. Describe one administrative and one military measure taken by Iltutmish to consolidate the empire of the Delhi Sultanate. And in A part, you have to write military measure. And I hope you already have written. Okay. He avoided a Mongol invasion by refusing to provide refuge to the Shah of Iran. And in the administrative measure, he introduced the Ikta system, under which the land of the kingdom was divided into tracts of various sizes, known as Iktas. These were assigned to the military commanders called Iqtadars. The Iqtadars were responsible for collecting land revenue and maintaining law and order in their Iqta. They also maintained some soldiers for the Sultan. Let's discuss third HOTS question. Who played the biggest role in successful establishment of the Delhi Sultanate? Give reasons for your answer. So the sample answer is here. And your answers may vary. And don't erase, only match your answers. Iltutmish played an important role on the successful establishment of the Delhi Sultanate. It was Iltutmish who organized the administration and military right of the kingdom and secured it against internal and external threats. Let's move to S2. Razia Sultan and Balban. And the first question is, following Iltutmish's death, three rulers ascended the throne in quick succession. What does this tell us about society prior to Balban's reign? Balban's successors were weak and incompetent. The declining authority of the Mamluks gave an opportunity to the nobility. Society prior to Balban's reign was in a state of political turmoil. None of the rulers were strong and capable enough to rule for a long period of time. The second question is, mention two ways in which Balban consolidated the Delhi Sultanate, and why did Balban refuse to leave the capital to conquer new territories? Here also your answers may vary. And the sample answer is, Balban consolidated the Delhi Sultanate by establishing the theory of the divine right of kings. This reduced the chances of internal rebellion. He set up a strong centralized army and a spy system. Balban refused to leave the capital to conquer new territories because he felt that it would leave the north open to attacks from the Mongols. And the third horse question is, why do you think the nobles did not want Razia to be the Sultan? Do you agree or disagree with them? Give reasons for your answer. The sample answer is, the nobles did not want Razia to be the Sultan because they were uncomfortable with the idea of being ruled by a woman. I disagree, and I hope you also. So I disagree with them because leadership qualities are not based on gender. Okay, now move to S3, policies of Alauddin Khilji. And the first question is, Jalaluddin Khilji headed up the Khilji dynasty, yet he was not able to retain power. And why? As you know, Jalaluddin Khilji was the founder of Khilji dynasty, but he was not a strong and competent ruler. In spite of the threat of rebellion from the nobles, he did not exclude any tribe from participating in the government. This led to many rebellions, and eventually Alauddin Khilji succeeded in a coup against Jalaluddin Khilji and took over the throne. Now the second question is, there are two parts, A and B, and the A question is, write two measures Alauddin Khilji took to prevent the Mongol threat. Alauddin Khilji ordered fortifications to be strengthened in the areas which were under the threat of Mongol attack. He placed the outlying provinces which lay along the path of Mongol movement under the strongest military generals. And in the B part, question is, how does Alauddin Khilji's Deccan policy reflect his capability as an administrator? Although Alauddin Khilji gained control over the Deccan region, he refused to bring it under his direct control. He understood that it would be difficult to govern and control the region from Delhi. He was satisfied with establishing his overlordship. As an able administrator, not only did he secure heavy tributes for the empire, but he did so without risking its stability. Now the third, that is horse question. What were Balban and Alauddin Khilji able to maintain peace and stability in the empire, while other sultans were not? Give reasons for your answer. Okay, here also your answers may vary. The sample answer is, Balban and Alauddin Khilji were both strong rulers who put great emphasis on the importance of a strong centralized state and army to control the region. They were also considerate of the lives of the common people. So our discussion of worksheet questions are over. Now let's move to practice question. As the first question is, how did Iltutmish prevent the Mongols' invasion? How did Iltutmish prevent the Mongols from invading India? Iltutmish prevented the Mongols from invading India by refusing to give refuge to the Shah of Iran, as this would have increased the threat of the Mongols invading the Delhi Sultanate. The second question is, why were Mamluk or slave military commanders able to establish their own kingdom in Delhi? Qutbuddin Aibak was the most trusted slave general of Muhammad of Ghor. He was able to establish the Mamluk or the slave dynasty as his minister Muhammad of Ghor set him free, and Aibak was able to take control of his Indian territories as Sultan. The third question is, what was Iqta system and how did it help the Sultan? The Iqta system was a land revenue and an administrative system that was introduced by Iltutmish in the Indian subcontinent. Under this system, the land of the kingdom was divided into tracts of different size called Iqtas. Iqtas were allotted to military commanders appointed by the Sultan as the governors. They were allotted a bigger or smaller piece of land as per their position. These governors, who were also the military commanders of the Sultan, were called Iqtadars. The Iqtadars collected revenue from the people of that Iqta and maintained the law and order. They were also expected to maintain a number of soldiers for the Sultan. In this way, the large Sultanate were administered and the Sultan also maintained the army. Now, the fourth question is, why was Razia not able to rule for a long period of time? Razia was not accepted as a sultan by the nobles of the Sultanate because she was a woman. Therefore, despite being able, efficient, and intelligent, she had to face opposition from the nobles and could not be the sultan for a long time. Fifth question. What challenges did Balban face when he ascended the throne of the Delhi Sultanate? Discuss any two measures undertaken by Balban to strengthen the empire during his rule. So, when Balban assumed power, he faced the challenge of maintaining a kingdom that was in a state of chaos and economic decline due to long period of political uncertainty and weak rulers. And here, after that, there are two parts. Discuss any two measures. So, as the first, here also your answers may vary, the sample answer. The first measure undertaken by Balban was to face this challenge. He established the theory of the divine right of kings. According to this theory, the king was all powerful as he was chosen by God to rule. This helped reduce the interference and power of the nobles. And the second measure was Balban suppressed the nobility very harshly, as the nobles from diverse nationalities had often rebelled and created problems such as lawlessness and disorder in the past. Now, the sixth question is, how did Balban suppress the rebellions of the nobles? Balban checked the rebellions of the nobles by suppressing them harshly. He also introduced the spy system to keep a check on the activities of the nobles. Their lives were closely watched and therefore controlled by the Sultan. He also put forward the theory of the divine right of kings, which helped reduce the interference and power of the nobles. Seventh question is, how did Alauddin Khilji control the power of nobles? Alauddin Khilji took certain harsh steps to control the power of his nobles. He prevented intermarriages without the Sultan's permission to prevent nobles from forming alliance. He set up a spy system to keep a check on his officials. Feudal grants were taken back from the nobles so that they could not extract excess revenue to enrich themselves. They were also prevented from keeping private armies. Eighth question is, why is Alauddin Khilji considered to be the first Turkish ruler in India to create an empire? Alauddin Khilji is considered to be the first Turkish ruler in India to create an empire due to his aggressive expansionist policy. He was the first Turkish emperor to expand his empire over the Vindhyas. The ninth question is, why was the conquest of the Deccan states important for Alauddin Khilji? And why did he not rule these territories directly? The conquest of the Deccan states was important for Alauddin Khilji because the heavy tributes paid by the Deccan rulers helped to fund the rest of the empire. He refused to rule these territories directly because he was aware that the Deccan would be difficult to govern and control from Delhi. And as you know, the 10th question is always higher order thinking question. So this horse question is, why do you think Alauddin Khilji had to introduce price control measures? Since the salaries of the soldiers had been reduced and peasants were being taxed heavily in order to maintain a large empire and standing army, the threat of rebellion due to dissatisfaction increased. To avoid this, to avoid this, Alauddin introduced price control measures that ensured that essential goods were available to common people at reasonable rates. So our discussion of practice question is over. Let's move to additional questions. Okay. As the first question is, what was the Bandai-Gani-e-Khas? Why were the slaves promoted to posts of responsibility by the Sultan? The Bandai-Gani-e-Khas was a group of specialized slaves who were trained from an early age to be loyal only to their master and not to perform administrative functions. The Sultan chose to promote them to positions of responsibility because he could trust them completely. And the second question is, describe the measures taken by Iltutmish and Alauddin to defend the empire against the Mongols. Okay, so both Iltutmish and Alauddin Khilji took similar measures to defend the empire against the Mongols. They ordered fortifications to be strengthened. The outlying provinces, which lay along the path of Mongol movement, were placed under the strongest military generals. And the third question is, imagine you are a noble in the court of Razia Sultan. Do you think she should not be a ruler because she is a woman? Give reasons for your answer. And here also your answers may vary. You can give answer both sides. Your answer might be of both sides. But I think that Razia Sultan should be a ruler because leadership abilities are not dependent on the gender of the ruler. Or I think that, but I am not thinking this. You may be, but I am sure you are not also. I think that Razia Sultan should not be a ruler as women are not allowed to rule. I would also not like to take orders from a woman ruler. And I hope you have not written this answer. Okay. Now the fourth question is, what do you think would happen to a merchant who tried to sell the grains at a high price during Alauddin's rule? Give reasons for your answer. Alauddin Khilji had introduced price control measures to ensure that goods were available to common people at reasonable rates. The merchant who tried to sell the grains at a high price during Alauddin's rule would be arrested and imprisoned. The fifth question is, why were there constant struggles among the nobles in the courts of the Delhi Sultanate? The nobility of the Delhi Sultanate was varied. There were Turks, Tajiks, and Arabs, all of whom had different interests. This led to internal struggle in the court. Now, the sixth question is Hordes of the early sultans. Which emperor do you think contributed the most to the consolidation of the Delhi Sultanate? And we have discussed in the teaching video about this. I think that Balban contributed the most to the consolidation of the Delhi Sultanate. He did not just believe in expanding the Sultanate, but also in maintaining peace and prosperity in the Sultanate. So, here additional question discussion is also over. Now, time of bonus questions. In the first section, the question was, with whom did Iltutmish marry? And the answer was Kutubuddin Aibak's daughter. In the second section, who was supported as a ruler by Balban? And the answer was Nasiruddin Mahmud. In the third section, Alauddin Khilji took extremely harsh measures against and the answer was nobility. In the fourth section, the land was measured and half of the produce was marked as, and in the blanks, the correct word was revenue. Okay, so now our discussion is over. So what we have discussed in this blog about establishment of the Delhi Sultanate and its expansion, policies of the Delhi Sultans, role of Balban in the consolidation of the empire, and significance of the reign of Alauddin Khilji. So our discussion is over, children. Prepare block 5 for block assessment. So all the best for your block assessment. Complete your work on time. Stay home. Stay safe. Bye bye. Have a nice day. Thank you, children.